Hello, you're watching news from Kazakhstan on K+. It is Tuesday, February 25th. These are the headlines. An Almaty resident is detained for picketing near the parliament walls. The woman demanded to reprimand police officers that harassed her daughter. Delegations of the Iran nuclear program six-party talks begin arriving in Almaty. Buddhists welcome guests by performing an unusual ritual. Steel doors, walkie-talkies, and surveillance cameras. Rights activists offer help to journalists as part of a new campaign. Around 30 cheated shareholders in Astana held a campaign in the courtyard of the Territory of Comfort residential block. People were protesting the Supreme Court's decision to return the building to its previous owner.
No way for Tamuz Invest. The aggrieved equity investors were chanting the name of the defaulting construction company who was adjudged to regain ownership of the half-constructed residential complex. The Astana citizens who won possession of the unfinished buildings by a court action 2 years back expressed resentment over the court ruling and appealed to the government's assistance in redressing injustice. Meanwhile, Tamuz Invest Group failed to deliver 300 apartments for the project in question alone. The deceived investors are convinced that the judges were bribed to return the illegitimate verdict. Just 2 days ago, the Supreme Court delivered a totally opposite judgment on the identical case against Munar House Construction Cooperative.
Almaty car owners are trying to defend their parking space, which is set to be demolished by court's decision. Attempts to find out who this land is to be given to have been unsuccessful so far. We turn to the next report for more.
Leave our parking lot. Residents of Almaty's Awezov district are trying to keep their parking lot intact. More than 200 car owners believe the city court made a wrong decision to demolish the space and later failed to inform the people about the impending process. Many of them still remember the sudden visit of the court officers. They just instructed us to clear the area within 2 days, referring to some court order, although not telling us which court made it and when. We were treated as if we were nobody and thus should clear the place without complaining. Witnesses say that a few days ago the issue with the parking lot escalated almost to the point of a brawl. The head of the parking enterprise was here when they shattered the windows and demolished the gates. Now we can just sit here and can't let any cars out because we are responsible for them. An empty lot can be found right next to the area under the dispute. It also used to be a parking lot for 300 cars. But 6 years ago the court ordered to demolish it as well, telling the people it will replace with a new 3-story facility. The promise, however, was never fulfilled. Now car owners are afraid that they will have no place to park their cars at all. What can they build here with a high-voltage power line and a small river running nearby? Our guess is that they are simply trying to get a share in the enterprise and a piece of land. On Monday, local residents went to the city administration to find out who and why is taking away their parking space. Unfortunately, none of the officials wanted to address the issue. As you can see, officials don't want to talk to us. The authorities just ignore us and we do not know what to do next. Car owners were told that they need to remove their cars from the designated area by the next visit of court officers scheduled for March 1st.
Meanwhile, a one-person picket near the parliament resulted in a detention. Almaty resident Gulsara Libekova was barely able to ask the lower house speaker Nurlan Nigmatulin to stop covering up corrupt officials before she was arrested by the police.
The rally lasted for only a few minutes. Gulsara Libekova says she sent numerous letters to the parliament speaker concerning her issue, but never received a response. According to the woman, for 5 last years she's trying to bring the Shymkent police to accountability for the kidnapping of her daughter and raiding her property back in 2008. Libekova knows all the names of the officers involved, including the Deputy Attorney General, the staff of the MI Investigating Committee, and the former leadership of the South Kazakhstan Regional Police Department. Laws don't work here. There is no rule of law and justice. My child became disabled and her life was ruined, while senior officials are cashing in on this situation.
A South Kazakhstan region imam from the Kaynarbulak village is accused of pedophilia. A woman reported a sexual assault on her 12-year-old daughter to the police. The regional mosque denounced his actions, but reiterated that he was not appointed an imam officially, but was chosen by the people. However, the spiritual administration of Muslims rushed to apologize for the imam's actions. Story up next.
The suspect, who is the former imam, used to live in this house that belonged to the mosque along with his wife and young son. The mess in the house most likely means that the tenants left the house in a rush. 26-year-old head of the family worked as imam in Narusullah Mosque less than a year. According to local residents, the young man was somewhat respectable in the Muslim community and well-versed in many religious matters. He preached moral purity and piety. He was enlightened in every way, say members of the congregation. He taught us to read the Quran. He taught us the Arabic alphabet because he spoke the language. Only Allah knows whether he is actually a rapist. All we know is that people chose him because he was enlightened. He lived here with his family. He's innocent till proven guilty, and we haven't seen anything either. Only God knows the truth. Maybe he did it or maybe not. Turns out the mosque in the village of Kaynarbulak is the first place where the imam ever worked, yet unofficially. According to regional representatives of the mosque, it would be inappropriate to call him imam just because he was chosen by the local Muslim community. We have plenty of mosques, yet not enough responsible workers. This person was chosen by the people. We allowed the local Muslim community to appoint an interim imam prior to the formal appointment by the chief mufti. Meanwhile, the police is in no hurry to make comments on this situation. However, apparently the 26-year-old imam has confessed. He was charged with sexual battery of a minor.
President Nazarbayev met on Monday with the Secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, Saeed Jalili. The delegations are arriving in Almaty for talks on the country's nuclear program. The six-party talks are slated for today. However, experts from Armenia, Kazakhstan, and Russia contend the meeting is for a large part pointless. Their views were broadcast at a special video conference hosted by the RIA news agency. But that is not what's most important, say the experts.
By entering into negotiations, the countries have long signified they are not willing to escalate the situation to war. They are rather trying to test the waters and make an overture towards a peaceful resolution. Meanwhile, proceeding with the nuclear program remains the only viable option for Iran, trapped in a deadlock by the Western countries. The G6 members representing Russia, USA, China, France, England and Germany will meet with the Tehran delegates in Almaty for multilateral anti-nuclear negotiations. The previous summits didn't yield any tangible results, as the United States keeps suspecting Iran of nuclear weapon development under the cover of peaceful atom program, while Iran is consistent in denying the accusations. Meanwhile, the experts are not expecting any breakthrough this time either, as Iran is unlikely to make any pivotal decisions in the run-up to the elections on June 14th. They're also convinced that the conflict won't be resolved until Tehran and Washington finally settle dissensions. A military attack against Iran is sure to provoke a long-term destabilization and large-scale conflicts within the region, affecting the entire Middle East and bordering territories.
On the eve of the six-party talks on the Iranian nuclear program in Almaty, members of the Buddhist order organized a prayer for peace in the world. The in and of itself interesting ritual was made even more exotic by the chosen location, people, and facts. Activists note that Kazakhstan is only offering comfort and hospitality in the negotiations, while no promises were made to allow the host country have final say in the talks.
The Mahatma Gandhi monument in Almaty turned into a congregation place for those praying for a successful resolution of Iran nuclear program negotiations. The Buddhist monk Yunsei Terasawa, who flew in from Japan to supervise the universal worship service, initially planned to hold a prayer event by the Eternal Light Memorial in the 28th Panfilov Heroes Park. He believes that the negotiation outcome will have a great impact on the world population, although the political nuances remain concealed from the public eye.
We as ordinary citizens. Meeting is a closed one. Even we cannot allow to go to enter the hotel.
Although the initial prayer service location in Panfilov Heroes Park hardly posed a proximity threat to the Intercontinental Hotel, the hosting site still decided to turn the Palmers out from the park territory. The activists were deprived of their passports and threatened with custodial sanctions from spreading the appeal leaflets in Ankara. The dissenting pacifists aside, even the Kazakhstan party was denied admission to negotiations, which led to political scientist Rasul Jumali to perceive Almaty as an affordable rental venue for holding the political event. This summit is a one-time targeted event involving a limited group of participants, which makes it rather affordable both for the inviting sides and organizers. I don't think the host location selection was influenced by conjunctural reasons. Meanwhile, Kazakh citizens seem to take very little to no interest in Iran's nuclear issues. Are you aware of the six-party talks on Iran's nuclear program? No, I'm not. Unfortunately, I haven't heard of it. I only heard the news on the US-Iran confrontation, but nothing on the nuclear issues. No, never heard of it. In turn, the Kazakhstan Ministry of Internal Affairs assured the progressive world community of creating the most favorable conditions for the flawless course of negotiations. The Kazakh people are known for their hospitality. We are always glad to welcome guests and visitors with jams of the national cuisine. Last year, the anti-nuclear G6 and Tehran delegates had 3 summit meetings in Istanbul, Baghdad and Moscow, which proved to be productive yet lacking tangible advances.
The famous 20th Congress of the CPSU Central Committee turned 57 on Monday. Attempts are made to squeeze it out of the nation's memory, as well as the role of leader and teacher Joseph Stalin. In the meantime, it was Kazakhstan that served as a sinister laboratory for the repression of entire nations. In this story, our correspondents attempted to learn more about the de-Stalinization of social consciousness and the existence of a so-called cult of personality.
We had been standing in a queue since 5 a.m. before we could enter the mausoleum and see the bodies of Stalin and Lenin. Stalinist Vyacheslav Artemyev considers himself a happy man as he had seen the body of Stalin shortly before the communist leader was removed from the Moscow's mausoleum. Artemyev is a committed Leninism and Stalinism party idealist all his life, evidenced by the abundance of portraits in his office. At the 20th Congress of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, Khrushchev heavily criticized Stalin and his historic role, which is absolutely outrageous. It can be justified and must be considered a crime against the Communist Party. Khrushchev's crime in his famous report on the personality cult and its consequences made at the 20th Congress of the Communist Party, held behind the closed doors on February 25, 1956. Social activist Jasaral Kuanashalin handed in his party membership card just before restructuring of the Soviet political and economic system. His father suffered much from the Stalin's regime, which made the junior fight hard against political uniformity, currently on the rise in contemporary Kazakhstan. Past political leaders never celebrated holidays named specifically after them, like we have the Day of the Presidents. There were also no such titles as the nation's leader or an outstanding scholar of the century. For younger generation, Khrushchev's famous report is just a piece of history and nothing more than a document. Stalin and Khrushchev are of little interest even for young historians, since they are no longer relevant, even ideologically. We do study this aspect of history devoted to the Soviet Union, the ideology, totalitarianism and Stalin's regime, which I think is not that interesting as, say, innovation, globalization, technology and new history approaches. While young historian Uljan Tulishova is concerned about Kazakhstan's further developments, communist Vyacheslav Artemyev is preparing for the 60th anniversary of Stalin's passing. Quite clearly, the society has yet to understand what a real cult of personality is.
Who will enter the Tajin list? The State Secretary's Friday's initiative to conduct a census of influential bloggers and social network moderators are still debated online. Authors fear the state order will not serve the internet realm well. Our reporters have more with the story.
For several days, the local internet community is actively discussing the new online trend, hashtagged Tajin's List. Bloggers and social network enthusiasts are now trying to guess who will be marked next, following the idea proposed by the State Secretary Marat Tajin during a press meeting. We need to have centralized databases of state and private organizations which develop political and public opinions, as well as for the most popular private analysts, bloggers and social network moderators in Kazakhstan and abroad, who are truly respected by the country's users. In response, the internet came up with demotivators and memes regarding the state initiative. Selling a blogger database will exchange it for Expo 2017 shares. If you like the stare-around blog tours, you ought to join Tajin's list. State TV channels have a summary budget of $150 million, so even if they spare $500,000, it will be enough to buy the entire Kaznet. I'm shutting down my Twitter for the time being because I'm afraid of being qualified as a blogger. Reporter Janibek Suleyev is wondering who will end up on the list, since only a few analytical blogs have a sufficiently large audience. They are not likely to influence Kazakhstan's internet community anyway, Tajin's list notwithstanding. In any way, the relations between the government and mass media and internet will not change dramatically. Attempts to team up Kazakh bloggers have already been made before. After tragic events in Zhanaozen on December 16, 2011, the government sent a team of online writers to the Mangistau region. Their news and photo stories evoked various responses, from appreciation to doubts and objectivity. Most often, the authors were accused of biased interpretations and following the government's agenda-driven campaigns. This is perhaps the most exotic author around. Almaty Zamantay Kazhi is poster boy blogger. Even before social networks, he fought mafia with the help of posters, limiting the message to 140 symbols, just like now with Twitter. But the question is still open whether the officials will remember the successful activist now.
The author of the project Protection for Human Rights Activist, Makhambet Abjan, announced a new campaign aimed at members of the media. Its organizers are ready to offer services such as composing official letters and legal assistance. However, experts doubt the efficacy of the project. On the latest development in this story.
Iron doors, radio and surveillance cameras. All of this is to make the journalist feel safe. A new campaign kicked off in Astana on Monday called Demeo versus Undemeo, which stands for active helping instead of passive witnessing. Organizers intend to protect reporters in jeopardy. According to Makhambet Abjan, the idea occurred after conducting the monitoring, which revealed that colleagues need help. We've noticed that many journalists are out of work. They fail to establish a new media, so they shift to different media office. However, the prosecutors don't let them work even then. The expert of Adilso's Freedom of Speech Fund hardly believes that this campaign would protect the media from lawsuits and questionable verdicts. The most recent example is the publication called Republic. The court even came up with the new concept of single media of Respublika, previously found neither in law nor in practice. These publications were declared extremist, and the journalists basically were banned to work in their field. As earlier mentioned by Zhovtis, the strict censorship has already been informally introduced. So who is going to protect us from it? No one. The radio DJ Vlad Linov also keeps the radio on his desk, although not for security purposes. This device is rather a rapid response to events. Vlad believes that most of the journalists in Kazakhstan for themselves already covered their bases by choosing to work for the state media. In fact, the authors tend to be into self-censorship, which is way stronger than editorial policy itself. However, even this won't keep them from trouble. Perfect example would be when I was heavily criticized for saying Almata instead of Almaty. There were plenty of comments on the internet where people literally threatened me with bodily harm. Moments like this are very frightening. Despite the fact that, according to media defenders, journalism in Kazakhstan has long been a risky profession, Makhambet Abjan's new project didn't seem to interest any reporter just yet.
In our final story, there are still honest people out there. An elderly resident of Tirinazek village in Kızılorda region got back $13,500 that she left inside a store. Zirlasha Lisharova saved that money from selling her house earlier.
Every time I get my pension, I buy groceries for the whole month, but I never touched these money. It was a roll deep in my pocket, so it was impossible to drop it accidentally. Of course, I was agitated, but somehow I stayed calm and I was sure it would be found. Zirlasha Lisharova found out about the missing money only the next morning. On February 21st, the pensioner reported the problem to the local police department, but was not expecting any real result. However, the police did find the bundle returned by an honest store owner. The bills were in this red bag. The store owner put it under the corner, believing that someone forgotten it. He didn't even check the contents, so he didn't even know there was money inside.
That is all we have time for now. Thank you for watching. See you tomorrow.